A prodigy girl discovers a forgotten diary hiding codes, capable of exposing secrets buried for decades, and by decoding them, she forever changes the fate of a powerful family. The Monday morning arrived laden with humidity and haste in the financial heart of Manhattan. The mirrored building of Dalton Corp reflected the gray sky as men and women in suits hurried through the lobby, eyes fixed on cell phones, minds occupied with spreadsheets and projections. The marble floor amplified every sound, transforming the environment into a corporate symphony of high heels and whispered conversations about investments and quarterly results. No one noticed the girl. She stood there, near the reception desk, too small for that universe of steel and glass. She clutched an old notebook to her chest, with a fabric cover and a faded blue ribbon worn by time. She wore a coat too big for the muggy weather and a child's backpack that seemed to weigh more than it should. Her brown eyes observed everything with a strange calm, as if this wasn't her first day there, as if she already knew every corner of that cold and impersonal place. The receptionist finally noticed her. Luna, 23 years old, newly hired, had not yet developed the necessary indifference to ignore a lost child. She rose from her chair and walked towards her with a professional smile that tried to disguise her concern. "Hi, sweetie. Are you lost? Can I help you?" The girl stared at her with disconcerting seriousness. "No, I'm not lost. I need to speak with Mr. Kyle Dalton." Luna blinked, surprised. "The CEO? Well, he doesn't take unscheduled appointments. Are your parents here? Did you come with someone?" "I came alone." "It's important. I have something that belongs to him." The receptionist looked around, searching for a responsible adult, but there was no one. The girl remained there, unshakable, as if her presence were the most natural thing in the world. Luna knelt down to be at the child's eye level. "What's your name?" "Olivia." "Olivia, Mr. Dalton is a very busy person. Perhaps you could leave what you have for him with me, and I guarantee it will reach his hands." "No, I need to deliver it personally. He'll want to see this." "It's about his mother." The mention of the CEO's mother made Luna hesitate. She vaguely knew the story. Kyle Dalton had lost his mother young, grew up under the care of a distant aunt, and built an empire from scratch with a determination bordering on obsession. No one talked about it at the company. It was forbidden territory, a wound everyone knew existed but no one dared to touch. "Wait here, okay? I'll see what I can do." Luna picked up the internal phone and called the executive secretary on the 18th floor. The conversation was quick and full of whispers. When she hung up, her face showed incredulity. "Mr. Dalton will see you, but only for 5 minutes." Olivia nodded, as if she already knew this would happen. The elevator ascended in silence. Luna tried to make conversation, but the girl only watched the numbers change on the display, hugging the notebook as if it were the most precious thing in the world. Upon reaching the 18th floor, they were greeted by Helen, the executive secretary, a 50-year-old woman with her hair in a perfect bun and an expression that revealed absolutely nothing. "Mr. Dalton is in a meeting, but he made an exception. 5 minutes, young lady. No more than that." Helen knocked on the frosted glass door and opened it without waiting for a response. Olivia entered alone. Kyle Dalton's office was exactly what one would expect from a successful CEO. Spacious, minimalist, with a panoramic view of the city that stretched as far as the eye could see. There was a dark wood desk, few personal objects, and a bookshelf filled with books on management, innovation, and technology. Everything there exuded control and efficiency. Kyle stood, his back to the door, looking out the window. He wore a dark gray suit that accentuated his erect posture and broad shoulders. When he turned, his blue eyes met the girl's with an expression that mixed curiosity and impatience. He was handsome in an austere way. Brown hair combed back, a strong jawline, a presence that effortlessly filled the room. But there was something in his eyes that told another story. Though distance, an emptiness carefully disguised behind the mask of success. "You have 5 minutes. My secretary said you have something that belongs to me." Olivia walked to the desk and placed the notebook on it with reverent care. Kyle looked at the object without understanding. Then his eyes widened. The blue ribbon, the handwriting on the spine almost erased by time. "Where did you get this?" His voice came out lower than he intended, laden with something he couldn't name. "My mother gave it to me. She said it was important, that you needed to read it." "Who is your mother?" "Isabella Nelson." The name hit Kyle like a punch. Isabella. It had been over a decade since he'd heard that name, even longer since he'd last seen her. The painter. The art teacher. The woman who appeared and disappeared from his life as quickly as a season. Isabella Nelson, he repeated, as if testing the taste of the name on his tongue. How did she get this? Olivia didn't answer immediately. Her eyes scanned the office, absorbing every detail, before returning to Kyle. She left it for you. Your mother, before she passed away. My mother took care of it all these years. Kyle picked up the notebook with hands that trembled imperceptibly. It was his mother's diary, the one that had disappeared after the funeral. He was 17 when it happened. He remembered searching for it desperately, rummaging through boxes and drawers, questioning distant relatives who had helped organize things. Nothing, as if the diary had simply evaporated. And now it was there, intact in the hands of a child who claimed to be Isabella's daughter. Why now? So many years later? Because now you're ready to understand. The girl's words carried a weight that didn't match her age. She pointed to the notebook. It's not just a diary. There are things written between the lines, codes. My mother taught me to see patterns. And there are many patterns here. Kyle opened the notebook to a random page. He immediately recognized his mother's handwriting, that elegant, hurried cursive. They were entries about daily life, reflections on motherhood, worries about money. Nothing extraordinary at first glance. But then he noticed. In the margins, small symbols, underlined numbers, words circled for no apparent reason. What is this? They're messages. She hid important things here. Things about you, about her, about people you knew. Olivia moved closer and pointed to a sequence of numbers. See? This here is a date. And these words, if you take just the first letters of each one and rearrange them, form a name. Kyle looked closer. She was right. The first letters, when rearranged, formed a name he knew very well. Richard Taylor, co-founder of Dalton Corp., the man who helped build the company from the ground up, who had stood by Kyle when he was just a young engineer with dreams too big. What does Richard have to do with this? I don't know. But your mother wanted you to know. There are other names too, other codes. I've decoded some, but not all. I thought you should do it. It's your story. Kyle slowly closed the notebook, as if he feared it might disappear again. He looked at Olivia with new intensity, trying to find traces of Isabella in that young face. And he found them. The same observant eyes, the same tilt of the head when she was thinking, the same slow, measured way of speaking, as if each word was chosen with care. Where is your mother now? In Hartford. She's not well. That's why she sent me here. She said she couldn't wait any longer. What does she have? Olivia lowered her eyes for the first time. She's very weak. The doctors don't know how much time she has. That's why I came. She needs you to go there. She needs to see you. There are things that can't be written. Kyle's world, so carefully organized, so meticulously controlled, began to crack. There was the past, materialized in the form of a diary and a child who carried the eyes of a woman he had loved and lost. There were secrets his mother had kept, coded messages that had traveled more than 20 years to reach him. He looked at Olivia and, for the first time in a long time, allowed genuine emotion to break through his mask. I'll need your phone number. An address. I need to speak with your mother. Olivia pulled a folded paper from her coat pocket and handed it to him. Everything was there. Address in Hartford, phone number, even the name of the clinic. She had come prepared, as if she knew exactly what would happen. Thank you, Kyle said, and this time the word was laden with meaning. You were very brave to come here. It wasn't courage. It was necessary. The girl gave a small smile. My mother always says that courage is doing what needs to be done, even when you're scared. I wasn't scared. I knew you would want to know the truth. And with that, Olivia turned and left the office, leaving Kyle alone with the diary and a weight in his chest he hadn't felt in years. The most powerful CEO in Manhattan, the man who commanded millions and made decisions that affected thousands of lives, was, at that moment, completely lost. But for the first time in decades, he felt that perhaps, just perhaps, he was on the right path to finding himself. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us which city you are watching us from. We continue. The following hours were a blur of cancelled meetings and unanswered phone calls. Kyle locked himself in his office with the diary, asking Helen not to disturb him under any circumstances. She obeyed without question, accustomed to moments when her boss needed total isolation to make important decisions. But this time was different. There were no spreadsheets, no financial projections. There was only an old notebook and memories he had buried under layers of ambition and work. The first entry was from 25 years ago. His mother wrote about the joy of seeing him graduate from high school, about his plans to study engineering, about the pride she felt even knowing resources were scarce. Kyle remembered that day, the simple ceremony, the blue dress she wore, the tight hug she gave him at the end. "You're going to change the world, son. I know it." He ran his fingers over the words, feeling the texture of the paper, imagining the pen gliding across the page decades ago. But then his eyes caught something strange. Some letters were slightly darker than others. It wasn't noticeable at first glance, but when he paid attention it became clear. It was intentional. Kyle grabbed a blank sheet of paper and began to write, letter by letter, symbol by symbol. What emerged was disturbing. Numbers that corresponded to dates. Dates of meetings he vaguely remembered, encounters his mother had had with people connected to the company he was beginning to build. Richard Taylor appeared repeatedly, but there was also another name, Monica Albright. Monica was the chief financial officer of Dalton Corp., one of the first people Kyle had hired when the company began to grow. A competent, rigorous woman who had transformed the initial chaos into a solid and reliable structure. She still worked for him, now as CFO with a salary few companies could offer. Kyle trusted her blindly. Why would Monica's name be coded in his mother's diary? He continued reading. The next entry spoke of financial worries, overdue bills and the difficulty of paying rent. But in the margins were geometric drawings, triangles within circles, lines that intersected to form patterns. Kyle photographed the pages with his cell phone and enlarged the images. The patterns were not random. They were coordinates. He picked up his laptop and entered the numbers into a map application. The result left him breathless. The coordinates pointed to an address in Greenwich, Connecticut, an affluent town. It was the house where Richard Taylor lived. The phone rang. Kyle answered without looking at the caller ID. "Kyle, is everything all right?" Helen's voice carried genuine concern. "You cancelled all your meetings. The board is worried?" "I'm fine. I just need more time. Tell them it's a personal emergency." A personal emergency. Kyle Dalton never had personal emergencies. He was the very definition of corporate stability. A man with no life outside work, no relationships to distract him, no hobbies to take up his time. The company was everything. It always had been. But now, looking at that diary, he realized how much he had lost along the way. How many conversations he had failed to have. How many questions he had failed to ask. His mother had passed away without him truly knowing her. And apparently she knew it. That's why she had left those codes, so that he could finally see beyond the surface. The next entry mentioned Isabella for the first time. It was a brief, almost shy note. "Kyle brought a young woman to dinner today, Isabella, painter. Eyes that see things others don't. I like her. I hope he likes her too, truly." Kyle smiled without realizing it. He remembered that dinner. It had been a culinary disaster. His mother had burned the chicken, and they ended up eating pizza. But Isabella had laughed, made his mother laugh too, and for a few hours the small, modest house had transformed into something warm and alive. It had been one of the last times he allowed himself that. Afterward, the company began to grow exponentially and time disappeared, swallowed by commitments and strategies. Isabella vanished shortly after. No explanations, no goodbyes. One day she was there, in her small apartment in Brooklyn Heights, painting enormous canvases that took up half the room. The next, the apartment was empty, the walls white, no trace that she had ever existed. Kyle had tried to find her. He called mutual friends, went to the university where she taught, nothing, as if she had evaporated. He thought it was because of him, because of his obsession with work, the nights he was absent even when present, the cancelled dinners and unkept promises. He took the blame and buried it along with all the other feelings he didn't have time to process. But the diary suggested something else. In the following pages, his mother wrote about an unexpected visit. "Monica was here today. Asked about Isabella. wanted to know if she and Kyle were serious, said it would be better if she kept her distance. That the company was at a delicate moment, and that distractions could be dangerous. I tried to argue. She was firm, said it was for his own good. Kyle reread the passage 3 times. Monica. Monica had talked to his mother about Isabella, suggested she keep her distance, and then, weeks later, Isabella disappeared. Could there be a connection? Could it be possible that Isabella's disappearance wasn't her choice, but the consequence of external interference? His cell phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. Olivia. The girl had left the number with him before leaving. The message was short and direct. "My mom wants to know if you're coming. She's waiting." Kyle typed a response. "I'm coming tomorrow. Do you need anything?" The reply came almost instantly. "Just come." "Thank you." He put his phone away and returned to the diary. There were more codes, more names, more dates. But now his mind was elsewhere. It was in Hartford, in a clinic, in a room where Isabella waited. The woman he had loved, who had disappeared, who had apparently kept his mother's diary all these years. The woman who had a daughter who deciphered codes with the same ease with which other children played hopscotch. Olivia. How old was the girl? 10, maybe 11. Brown eyes, dark hair, a serious and observant demeanor. Traits that reminded him of Isabella, but also something more. Something Kyle couldn't name, but that deeply bothered him. He opened the desk drawer and took out an old photo, kept among important documents. It was from 15 years ago, taken on a quick trip to the coast. Isabella was beside him, smiling, her hair messy from the wind. Kyle held the camera with his arm stretched out, trying to capture both of them in the frame. They looked happy. They were happy, at least in that instant frozen in time. What happened to them? When exactly did everything fall apart? Kyle placed the photo next to the diary and continued deciphering. Page after page, code after code. His mother had been meticulous. Each entry had layers, hidden meanings that only someone determined to find them would see. She knew he was like that. Determined, obstinate, incapable of leaving a mystery unsolved. Around 7 in the evening, Helen knocked insistently on the door. "Kyle, you need to eat something." "I ordered dinner. It's out here." He opened the door and took the bag, thanking her with a nod. Helen looked at him with maternal concern. "Do you want to talk about what's happening?" "Not now, but thank you." She hesitated as if wanting to say something more, but ended up just nodding and returning to her desk. Kyle closed the door again and ate mechanically, paying no attention to the taste. His mind was elsewhere, connecting dots, drawing invisible lines between people and events. Richard Taylor, Monica Albright, Isabella Nelson, his mother, all connected in some way he didn't yet fully understand. And at the center of it all, a 10-year-old girl who had come to him with a diary and a mission. Kyle picked up his phone and called a number he rarely used. It was answered on the 3rd ring. "Richard? It's me, Kyle. I need to talk to you." The voice on the other end sounded surprised. "Kyle, at this hour? Did something happen? Can we meet tomorrow?" "Early in the morning, before work." There was a pause. "Sure. At the office?" "No, I prefer somewhere more private. How about that coffee shop near your house?" Another silence. Longer this time. "All right. At 7? "At 7. Kyle hung up before Richard could ask more questions. He looked out the window. The city was lit up, thousands of lights twinkling in the darkness. Down below, life followed its normal course. People returning home, having dinner with their families, watching television, sleeping. A normalcy he had never had, that he had chosen to abandon in the name of something greater. But now, looking at that diary, he realized how much he had lost along the way. How many conversations he had failed to have. How many questions he had failed to ask. His mother had passed away without him truly knowing her. And apparently she knew it. That's why she had left those codes, so that he could finally see beyond the surface. He returned to the diary. The last entry he had read ended with a phrase underlined 3 times. "Protect what is yours, Kyle. Don't let them take away what really matters to you. I failed to do that. I hope you are stronger." His mother's words, written years before her passing, sounded like a warning he hadn't understood at the time, that he might not even have known existed. But now, with all the pieces beginning to fit together, the meaning became terribly clear. His mother knew something important enough to be coded, hidden, preserved until the right moment. And that moment was now. 25 years later, the past returned to demand explanations. And Kyle, the man who had built an empire by denying his emotions, would finally have to face them. The meeting with Richard took place exactly at 7 in the morning. The coffee shop in Greenwich, Connecticut was still empty, only the barista preparing the first machines of the day. Richard arrived punctually, wearing a casual sweater that contrasted with the suits he wore at the office. At 62, he still maintained an erect posture and alert eyes, but there was something different that morning. A tension Kyle recognized immediately. They greeted each other briefly and sat at a table in the back. The coffee arrived steaming. Neither touched their cups. "Are you going to tell me what's going on, or are we just going to sit here looking at each other?" Richard had the direct manner of someone who had built a career without beating around the bush. Kyle placed the diary on the table. Richard paled. "Where did you get that?" "It doesn't matter. What matters is what's written here, or rather what's hidden here." Kyle opened it to a marked page. "Your name appears several times, in code." "My mother was trying to tell me something." Richard ran a hand over his face, a gesture of weariness that seemed to carry decades. "My boy, there were things that happened back then that you didn't understand, that you couldn't understand. You were too young, too focused on the company. Then explain it to me now. I'm old enough." The older man sighed deeply. "When your mother became gravely ill, we had just closed our first major contract, the one with the German multinational. Do you remember? That's what put Dalton Corp on the map." "I remember." "Well, your mother was involved behind the scenes. She handled the administrative part, took care of the paperwork, organized the documents. She was good at it, detail-oriented." Richard paused, choosing his words carefully. "But she discovered some irregularities. Nothing serious, nothing illegal, but things that could compromise the negotiation if they came to light." "What kind of irregularities?" "Altered documents. Dates changed to make us seem more established than we really were. References that weren't entirely true. Things we did to compete on equal footing with larger companies." Kyle felt his stomach tighten. "So you lied?" "We embellished the truth." Richard stared at him without flinching. "And it worked. We got the contract. The company took off. Everything you built afterward was only possible because of that moment. And my mother, what did she do when she found out? She wanted us to confess. Said it wasn't worth building something on fragile foundations. Monica and I tried to convince her it was too late, that revealing it now would destroy everything. She didn't agree. There were arguments, many arguments." Kyle closed his eyes. He was beginning to understand. "You pushed her away. We protected her. If she had exposed it, the company would have gone bankrupt, and you would have lost everything you fought for." She eventually understood that. She agreed to step away from administrative processes. "Monica took her place. And Isabella? Where does she fit into this?" Richard seemed genuinely surprised. "Isabella Nelson, the artist you were dating? She's in the diary too. In code." "I don't know anything about her." Richard shook his head. "Monica might know. She was closer to your mother back then." Kyle put the diary away and stood up. "Thank you for the honesty, finally." "Kyle, wait." Richard also stood. "I know it wasn't right. I've carried this for years. But everything we did was to protect you, to protect what you were building. Don't protect me anymore. I prefer the truth." Outside the coffee shop, Kyle took a deep breath of the cold morning air. He felt his phone vibrate. Another message from Olivia. "My mom is worse today. If you can come, come soon." He didn't think twice. He got in the car and set the GPS for Hartford. The trip would take just over an hour. Enough time to process what he had just heard, but not enough to emotionally prepare for what was to come. The clinic was in a quiet neighborhood of Hartford, a low-rise building surrounded by gardens. It didn't have the cold institutional look of typical hospitals. It looked more like a large house, adapted for special care. Kyle parked and stayed in the car for a few minutes, looking at the building, trying to gather courage. When he finally entered, he was greeted by a kind nurse who led him down bright corridors to a room on the second floor. Before opening the door, she said softly, "She's weak but conscious. She asked us to let her know when you arrived. She's been waiting for you for a long time." Kyle entered. The room was simple but comfortable, with a window overlooking the garden. And there in the bed was Isabella. He barely recognized her. The once vibrant body was frail. The hair that used to fall in dark waves was now short and grey. But her eyes were the same. Those eyes that saw things others didn't. "Kyle." Her voice was weak, but there was a genuine smile. "You came." He approached slowly, as if fearing she might disappear again. "I came. I brought the diary." "I know," Olivia told me. "She's impressive, isn't she?" "She is. Very much so." Kyle pulled up a chair and sat beside the bed. "Why did you keep the diary all these years?" "Because your mother asked me to." Isabella moved her hand, a slow, careful gesture, until it touched his. "She came to see me a few days before she passed away. She said she was afraid certain truths would be lost. She gave me the diary and made me promise that when the time was right, I would ensure it reached you." "And disappearing. Was that also her request?" Isabella's eyes filled with tears. "No. That was a consequence of a conversation I had with Monica Albright. She sought me out, said my relationship with you was hindering her plans for the company's expansion, that you were torn between giving me attention and focusing on work. She offered me money to step away." Kyle felt anger rise. "And you accepted?" "No." Isabella wiped away tears with her free hand. "I refused. I said I loved you, and that no money would change that. But then she changed her strategy. She said that if I truly loved you, I should set you free, that you had a greater destiny, and that I was being selfish by tying you to an ordinary life. And you believed her. I was young, insecure. I saw you working late, cancelling our dates, distant even when you were present. I started to think maybe she was right, that maybe I was indeed an obstacle." Isabella took a deep breath, the effort visible. "So I left. I moved cities, tried to start over. I found out I was pregnant 2 weeks later. The world stopped." Kyle heard the words, but it took him a few seconds to process them. "Pregnant. With your child." "Olivia is your daughter, Kyle." He stood up abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. His breathing was rapid, his heart pounding erratically. Daughter, he had a daughter. A 10-year-old girl who had come to him with a diary, who had deciphered codes, who had looked at him with those serious, observant eyes. His eyes. "Why did you never tell me?" "Because when I found out, you were already in a different phase. The company was exploding. You were appearing in magazines, giving interviews. You seemed so distant, so unattainable. I thought it would be selfish of me to show up and change your whole life because of a choice I had made." "The choice to leave. But she had the right to know me. I had the right to know." "I know that now," Isabella cried openly. "I know. That's why I asked your mother to keep the diary." "She knew about Olivia." "She was the only person I told. She said that when the time was right, when you were ready, everything would be revealed. That life has its own timing." Kyle sat down again, this time closer. He held Isabella's hand with both of his. "What is she like?" "She's incredible. Too smart for her age. She sees patterns in everything. Solves puzzles that adults can't." Isabella smiled through her tears. "She has your logical reasoning, but she also has my sensitivity. It's a perfect combination. And what does she know about me?" "Everything. I never lied to her. I told her her father was a good man, who built important things, but that we didn't know each other. She always wanted to meet you. When it became clear my time was running out, she insisted on going to you. She said she couldn't let you pass away without knowing you had a daughter. No one is leaving anymore." Kyle spoke with a determination that surprised himself. "You're going to get treatment. The best doctors, the best treatments. I'll take care of it." "Kyle, we've tried everything." Isabella looked at him tenderly. "There's nothing more to do, but I'm not sad. I lived, I loved, I raised a wonderful daughter. My only sadness was thinking you would never know about her. Now I know, and I can leave in peace." "Don't talk like that," he squeezed her hand tighter. "There's still time. For everything." They stayed like that for a long moment, connected by silence and lost decades. Then the door opened slowly and Olivia entered. She looked at her father and mother, and without saying anything, walked towards them. Kyle opened his arms and the girl approached. It was the first time they had embraced. The first of many hugs that would come, but also perhaps the most important. The hug that confirmed what the codes and diaries only suggested. They were a family, fragmented, hurt by time and circumstances, but still a family. If this story interested you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit like. Tell us which city you are watching us from. We continue. The following days were a roller coaster of emotions Kyle had never imagined possible. He divided his time between Manhattan and Hartford, between the office and the clinic, between the ruthless CEO and the father who discovered he had a 10-year-old daughter. The transition was not smooth. There were moments when he looked at Olivia and didn't know what to say, how to act, what role to play. She seemed to understand with that disconcerting maturity she possessed and demanded nothing beyond his presence. But Kyle needed answers. The diary continued to reveal layers, and the more he deciphered, the more disturbing the emerging picture became. His mother had not merely been removed from administrative duties. She had been systematically isolated, her contributions minimized, her voice silenced. And all this while he, blinded by ambition and work, had noticed nothing. On Wednesday, he scheduled a meeting with Monica Albright. Not at the office, but at a discreet restaurant on the Upper East Side. He needed to see her outside the corporate environment, away from protocols and professional masks. Monica arrived punctually, wearing an impeccable navy blue suit and a neutral expression Kyle knew well. It was the same expression she wore during audits and difficult negotiations, the expression of someone who reveals nothing. "You said it was important." Monica sat elegantly, placing her purse beside her chair. "Is it something related to the quarterly numbers?" "No, it's about the past." Kyle wasted no time with preambles. "It's about my mother, and about Isabella Nelson." Monica's face showed no surprise, but her eyes betrayed a flash of something, recognition, perhaps even fear. "That was a long time ago, Kyle." "It was. But the consequences are still here." He placed the diary on the table. "My mother left this. With codes. Your name is all over it." Monica looked at the notebook as if it were a venomous snake. "I don't know what you're talking about. Don't lie to me." "Not now." Kyle leaned forward. "Richard already told me about the irregularities, about how you pushed my mother away when she wanted to expose the truth. What I want to know now is about Isabella. Why did you go to her? Why did you offer her money to stay away from me?" Monica picked up her glass of water and drank slowly, buying time. When she finally spoke, her voice was controlled, but there was an underlying tension. "I did what I thought was best for the company, for you." You were torn, Kyle. Half the time thinking about her, the other half trying to keep the company afloat. We needed you whole. You had no right to make that decision for me. I did. As your CFO, as someone who invested everything in that company, I did. Monica straightened her back. You were young, passionate, vulnerable. If I hadn't intervened, you would have thrown everything away for a college romance. She wasn't a college romance. Kyle felt the anger boiling within him. She was the woman I loved. And you took that from me. You took it from her, too. And in the process, you took something even more important from me. What do you mean? Olivia. Isabella was pregnant when she left. I have a 10-year-old daughter who grew up without knowing me because you thought you knew what was best for me. Monica's face finally showed emotion. Genuine shock. She paled. I didn't know. You have to believe me, I had no idea. But you should have thought about it. You should have considered that your actions would have consequences beyond numbers and projections. Kyle felt his voice choke. I lost 10 years of my daughter's life. She grew up without a father. Isabella raised a child alone, while I built an empire without knowing I already had something much more valuable waiting for me. Monica lowered her eyes. I'm sorry. It's not enough. Kyle picked up the diary. But there's more, isn't there? There's something you're still not telling me. My mother knew something bigger. She was trying to protect me from you. What are you talking about? About the altered documents. The lies that sustained the company in the early years. Richard said they were small things, embellishments of the truth. But my mother wouldn't code a diary because of small lies. What else was happening? Monica remained silent for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was different, smaller. There was an investor, in the early days. A man named August Finch. He put money into the company when no one else believed in us. I remember him vaguely. He left after the first year, didn't he? He didn't leave. Monica looked directly at Kyle. We forced him out. We invoked a contractual clause, alleged breach of terms. He lost all his initial investment. Your mother found out. She had all the original contracts, saw the alterations we made. She wanted to report it. And you stopped her. We convinced her that exposing it would destroy you, that August was already ruined anyway, that it wouldn't make any difference anymore. She agreed to keep quiet, but she never forgave us. She was never the same after that. Kyle felt the weight of the revelations like consecutive punches. Each new truth was a layer of betrayal, of manipulation, of decisions made behind his back that shaped his entire life. You stole from a man and silenced my mother when she wanted to do the right thing. We saved the company. Monica tried to regain firmness in her voice. If we hadn't done that, Dalton Corp wouldn't exist today. You wouldn't be who you are. Perhaps I'd prefer not to be who I am if it meant having built something honest. Kyle stood up. You're fired, Monica. From now on, you are no longer part of Dalton Corp. You can't do that. I have contracts, I have share options. I can and I will. My lawyers will be in touch. We'll do this as fairly as possible, but you no longer work for me. He picked up the diary and walked towards the exit. And Monica? I hope I never see you again trying to control someone's life, thinking you're doing them a favor. He left the restaurant with trembling legs. He sat in his car and stayed there, breathing deeply, trying to process everything. His company, his success, everything had been built on rotten foundations. Lies, manipulations, people harmed. And he, the great Kyle Dalton, had merely been a pawn in a game others played. His phone rang. It was Olivia. Dad? The word still sounded strange, new. Are you okay? I felt something was wrong. How did you feel? I don't know. I just felt it. Are you coming today? Sue, I'm coming. I'm on my way now. I need to see you both. We're waiting for you. Kyle drove to Hartford on autopilot. His mind buzzed with plans. He needed to fix this. He needed to find August Finch and somehow compensate him for what had been done. He needed to restructure the company with honesty, even if it meant exposing his own flaws. But above all, he needed to be present for Olivia, to be the father she deserved, even if belatedly. When he arrived at the clinic, Isabella was sleeping. Olivia was sitting beside the bed, drawing in a notebook. She looked up when Kyle entered and smiled. That smile he was beginning to recognize as something precious. He sat beside her and looked at the drawing. It was a complex labyrinth, with paths that intertwined and led to a center where a heart was drawn. You made this? Yes, it's how I feel sometimes. Like I'm in a maze trying to get to the center. And the center is where we're all together. She pointed to the heart. Mom, you and me. Kyle felt his eyes burn. It's a beautiful drawing. Do you want to try to solve it? It's hard, but I think you can. They spent the next hour working together on the labyrinth, Olivia giving hints when he got lost, Kyle discovering that this brilliant child was not only intelligent but also kind and patient. Characteristics he didn't know where they came from, but which filled him with pride nonetheless. Isabella woke up and watched them in silence, a faint but genuine smile on her face. You already look like a team. We're trying. Kyle looked at her. How are you feeling? Tired but happy. Seeing you two like this together is all I wanted. She extended her hand and Kyle held it. Thank you for giving us this chance. For her. I should be thanking you for having her, for taking care of her all these years alone. I should have been there. You couldn't be. You didn't know. Isabella squeezed his hand. But you're here now, and that's what matters. Olivia looked at the two adults and said with her peculiar wisdom, the labyrinth sometimes takes a long time to solve. But when you get to the center, the confusing journey is worth it. And so in that small room in a Hartford clinic, the three began to build something that should have existed 10 years ago. A family. Imperfect, belated, marked by absences and misunderstandings, but real. And perhaps for the first time in his life, Kyle understood that human and vulnerable connection was worth more than all the empires he could build. The last coded passage in the diary pointed to a place Kyle hadn't visited in over 20 years. The beach house in Montauk, Long Island, a modest construction his mother had rented for a few consecutive summers when he was still a teenager. He vaguely remembered the vacations there, the weekends when she dragged him away from books and the city, insisting he needed fresh air and sun. At the time, he thought it a waste of time. Now deciphering the final symbols, he understood that place held something important. Olivia insisted on coming along. Isabella, though weak, gave her blessing. You need to see what's there, and she can help you find it. She was always better than any of us at seeing what's hidden. They left on a Saturday morning. The trip to the Long Island coast would take about 3 hours. Kyle drove while Olivia sat in the passenger seat, watching the landscape change from buildings to mountains, from concrete to green. She didn't talk much, but occasionally pointed out something interesting. A bird, a cloud formation, a colorful house by the road. Kyle noticed she absorbed everything, as if cataloging the world in her mind. "Do you like to travel?" he asked, breaking the comfortable silence. "I've never traveled much. Mom always worked a lot." Olivia looked at him. "But I like new places. Every place has its own patterns." "What kind of patterns?" "Everything has a pattern if you know how to look. Like how people walk, how houses are built, how trees grow." She pointed to the approaching mountains. "See those mountains? The vegetation follows a density pattern according to altitude, and the roads were built following the natural valleys. Everything fits together." Kyle smiled. "You really are impressive. Do you know that?" "Mom always says that, but sometimes I'd rather be normal. Other kids don't like to talk about patterns and codes. I would, now at least." He glanced at her. "And I'll try to be the kind of person you can talk about these things with. You already are. That's why I came looking for you." They arrived in Montauk in the early afternoon. The town was quiet, still off-season. Kyle followed the GPS directions until he found the narrow street leading to Fort Beach. The house looked different from what he remembered. Smaller, more worn by time and sea air. The blue paint had faded to a greenish gray, and the garden was overgrown with weeds. But it was the same house. He recognized the shape of the windows, the wooden porch overlooking the sea. "It's here." He turned off the engine. "The last clue in the diary points to this house." They got out of the car and walked to the door. Kyle had the key, sent weeks ago by a lawyer who handled his mother's estate. He had never understood why she had kept that house, paying rent for decades without ever visiting it again. Now it was beginning to make sense. She was keeping something there. Something too important to be forgotten. The door opened with a creak that echoed through the empty house. The smell of mold and salt filled their nostrils. They entered slowly, treading carefully on the wooden floorboards that groaned beneath their feet. The living room was empty, just a few pieces of furniture covered by dusty sheets. The kitchen had old utensils hanging on the walls. Everything frozen in time, waiting. Olivia walked through the house with her characteristic attention, touching the walls, observing the corners, looking for something only she knew how to identify. Kyle followed her, holding the diary open to the last coded page. The final symbols were different from the previous ones. More complex, almost artistic. Circles within squares, lines forming stars, numbers repeating in specific sequences. "There's something on the porch." Olivia stopped in front of the fogged glass door. "The pattern of the symbols in the diary matches the design of the floor out there." They went out to the porch. The afternoon sun illuminated the sea stretching to the horizon. The breeze carried the sound of waves and the cry of seagulls. The wooden floor was worn, but Olivia was right. There was a pattern. Boards arranged at specific angles that formed geometric designs. And in the left corner, where the porch met the house wall, a board was slightly raised. Kyle knelt and pulled. The board came up easily, revealing a hollow space beneath. Inside, protected by plastic, was a metal box. He picked it up with trembling hands and placed it on the floor. Olivia sat beside him, her eyes shining with curiosity. "Open it." "That's what we came for." Kyle opened the box. Inside were envelopes, old photos, folded documents, and a small notebook. He started with the envelopes. The first contained a handwritten letter from his mother, dated a few days before her passing. The handwriting was shaky but legible. "My dearest Kyle, if you're reading this, it means you managed to decipher the diary. I always knew you would. You inherited my stubbornness and my love for puzzles. There are so many things I should have told you in life, but I didn't have the courage. Fear of hurting you, fear of destroying what you were building. But now I realize that silence can hurt more than the truth. Richard and Monica are not bad people. They genuinely believed they were protecting you, just as I also believed at certain moments. But in the process of protecting you, we ended up isolating you. We distanced you from the things that truly matter. Love, family, real human connections. About Isabella I knew. She came to me pregnant, scared, not knowing what to do. I helped her as best I could. I gave her money I secretly saved, offered emotional support. But I asked her not to tell you, not yet. You were at a crucial moment, and I feared the news could destroy you or worse, make you abandon your dreams out of obligation. Was it selfish of me? Probably, but I did what I thought was right at the time. Now I can only hope that you find a way to forgive all of us, and especially that you build with Isabella and with your son or daughter what we couldn't give you. A real family, unconditional love, presence. The documents in this box prove everything. The company's irregularities, what was done to August Finch, the manipulations. Use them as you see fit, to correct mistakes, to build something new, or simply to understand what happened. The choice is yours and always has been. I love you more than words can express. Your mother who never stopped believing in you. Kyle finished reading with tears streaming down his face. Olivia, in silence, held his hand. She said nothing, just stayed there, offering the presents her grandmother so valued in the letter. The other envelopes contained the mentioned documents, original contracts, printed emails, notes proving every irregularity committed in the company's early years. There was even a letter from August Finch, written to Kyle's mother, asking for help to understand what had happened. Her reply, never sent, was stapled with it. In it, she apologized for not being able to do anything, for being caught between loyalty to her son and the need to do the right thing. The photos were sweeter. Kyle as a child playing on the beach, his mother young, smiling at the camera with her feet in the sand. And some photos he didn't know. Isabella, visibly pregnant, sitting on the same porch where they were now. His mother beside her, hugging her. On the back of one photo, a note. Isabella and the promise of better days. May my grandson or granddaughter be happier than we managed to be. Olivia looked at the photo with curiosity. Grandma met Mom when she was pregnant with me? She did, and she helped her. Kyle hugged his daughter. My mother may have made mistakes, but her heart was in the right place. She loved you even before you were born. The small notebook in the box contained poems and reflections, thoughts his mother had recorded over the years about regrets, hopes, and dreams for the future. One of the last entries simply said, I hope Kyle learns that success without love is just an elaborate form of loneliness. May he understand this before it's too late. They stayed on the porch until the sun began to set. Kyle read every document, every letter, every note. Olivia explored the house, finding small treasures. A deck of cards with bent corners. A 1,000-piece puzzle still in its box. A large and perfect shell that echoed the sound of the sea when held to the ear. As the afternoon began to fade, they had a simple snack with what they had brought and sat on the sand in front of the house. The sea was calm, reflecting the orange colors of the sunset. Olivia built sandcastles with the seriousness of someone designing skyscrapers. Do you like it here? Kyle asked. Very much. It has a different rhythm from the city, slower, more natural. She stopped building and looked at him. Could we come more often? We can. Maybe even renovate the house, make it our place. Yours, mine, and your mother's. She would like that, Olivia smiled. She always liked the sea. She says it's the only place where she can truly breathe. Then let's do it. Let's turn this place into our refuge, a place where we can just be ourselves. When the sun finally set, they returned to the car carrying the metal box and a renewed sense of purpose. Kyle knew what he needed to do. The documents proved all the irregularities. He would have to expose everything, even if it tarnished the reputation of the company he had built. He would have to find August Finch and compensate him justly. He would have to rebuild Dalton Corp on honest foundations, even if it meant starting almost from scratch. But above all, he had a family now. A daughter who taught him to see patterns not only in numbers, but in life. A woman he had loved and who had carried the weight of secrets alone for a decade. And the memory of a mother who, despite all her mistakes, had never stopped loving him and trying to guide him, even after she was gone. As he drove back to Hartford with Olivia sleeping in the seat beside him, Kyle felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the empty hope of corporate growth or financial success, but the real hope of building something worthwhile. True relationships, unconditional love, a life with meaning that went beyond numbers on spreadsheets. The following weeks tested Kyle in ways no corporate negotiation ever had. He hired the best lawyers to review all the documents found in the beach house. The truth was worse than he had imagined. The irregularities were not just embellishments, but deliberate frauds that sustained the company in its early years. August Finch had not simply been pushed aside, but systematically deceived and impoverished. Kyle knew he had two choices. Bury everything again. Protect the empire he had built or expose the truth and accept the consequences. The decision, surprisingly, was easy. He had spent his entire life hidden behind masks, building walls between himself and the world. He wouldn't do that anymore. Not after everything he had learned. He scheduled an extraordinary board meeting on a rainy Tuesday. The room was tense, executives whispering to each other, speculating about the reason for the urgent summons. Richard Taylor was there, visibly uncomfortable. Monica had not been invited, her dismissal already formalized with HR. Kyle began without preamble. In recent years, our company has grown exponentially. We are a reference in innovation, management, and results. But there is something you don't know. Something I myself only recently discovered. And today I will share it with all of you. He projected the scanned documents onto the screen. Altered contracts, compromising emails, notes about questionable decisions. Each slide was a revelation, each image a wound being exposed. The faces around the table ranged from shocked to horrified. Our company was built on lies, on fraud, on the deliberate harm of people who trusted us. Kyle paused, letting the weight of his words settle. And I, as CEO and founder, take full responsibility for this. A murmur ran through the room. One of the board members stood up. Are you saying we're going to publicly admit all this? This will destroy the company. Our stock will plummet. Perhaps, probably. Kyle stared at him firmly. But it's the right thing to do. We will seek out every harmed person and compensate them appropriately. We will redo contracts, correct errors, pay what is due. And if that means we have to rebuild from scratch, then that's what we will do. Kyle, be sensible, Richard finally spoke, his voice laden with urgency. This happened decades ago. The people involved have already moved on. Why destroy everything now? Because I can't live with it anymore. And because my daughter is watching. Kyle, for the first time, showed emotion. Olivia is 10 years old and already sees the world more clearly than I have in almost 4 decades. She deciphers codes, finds patterns, sees truths, and I will not be the man who teaches her that success justifies dishonesty. The board debated for hours. Some threatened to resign. Others proposed intermediate solutions, ways to compensate victims without public exposure. But Kyle was inflexible. It would be done the right way, openly and honestly, or he would resign and take the documents to the press anyway. In the end, most relented. Not out of agreement, but out of pragmatism. It was better to control the narrative than to let Kyle expose everything unsupervised. An official statement was drafted to be released the following week. Meanwhile, Kyle would personally begin the process of locating and compensating the victims. Finding August Finch took only a few days. The man lived in a simple apartment in Yonkers, worked as a freelance consultant, and was 72 years old. When Kyle rang the doorbell, he didn't know what to expect. Hostility, perhaps. Justified anger, but August simply invited him in. He was thin, with completely white hair and blue eyes faded by time. But there was a dignity in his posture, a serenity that contrasted with what had been done to him. I was wondering if you'd ever come. August served coffee in simple cups. Your mother tried to help me back then, you know. She was the only one who had the courage to admit something was wrong. I know. I found her letters. Kyle accepted the cup. I came here to apologize and to compensate you. Not adequately, because it will never be adequate, but in the best way we can. August watched him in silence for a long moment. You seem different from the young man I knew. Back then you were consumed by ambition. You saw only numbers and opportunities. You didn't see people. I've changed, or I'm trying to change. I have a daughter now. She's teaching me to see what really matters. They talked for hours. August recounted how the loss of the investment had affected his life, the years of struggle, the relationships destroyed by financial tension. But he also spoke about rebuilding, about learning to live with less, about finding meaning beyond money. There was a wisdom in his words that Kyle absorbed like one drinks water in the desert. When Kyle finally presented the compensation proposal, calculated to include the original investment, accumulated interest, and an additional amount for moral damages, August merely nodded. This will help. My grandchildren will be able to study in good schools. But what touches me most is that you came personally, that you admitted the mistake. That's worth more than the money. Meanwhile, in Hartford, Isabella fought. Doctors had given her weeks, maybe days. Kyle spent every night at the clinic, sharing the room with Olivia. They spoke softly so as not to wake her when she slept, but often she was awake, listening. Kyle told her about the company, about the changes he was implementing. Isabella smiled faintly but genuinely. "I'm proud of you," one night she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Not for what you built, but for the courage to deconstruct when necessary. I should have done it years ago. With you, with us." "Time has its own rhythm," Isabella held his hand. "I'm glad we had these last few weeks. Glad you know Olivia, that she has a father now. She always had a father. I just didn't know." Kyle felt the tears. "You raised an incredible person, Isabella, alone. I should have been there. You're here now. That's what matters." She looked at Olivia, sleeping in an armchair beside the bed. "Take care of her. Not in the way you were cared for, with protections and distances, but with true presence, with honesty, with love that isn't afraid to show itself imperfect. I promise." Isabella passed away in a quiet dawn 2 weeks later. Olivia was holding one of her hands, Kyle the other. There was no drama, no eloquent final words, just a gentle exhale and then silence. Peace. The funeral was small. Isabella's college friends, some students she had taught over the years, neighbors from Hartford. Olivia didn't cry during the ceremony. She stood holding Kyle's hand, observing everything with that seriousness that was uniquely hers. Only later, when they were alone in the car returning to Manhattan, did she allow the tears to come. Kyle stopped the car on the shoulder and hugged her. He let her cry against his chest, let her sob out all the emotions she had been holding back. He also cried. For the lost decades, for the woman he had loved and let go, for the mother he had never truly known, for all the wrong choices he had made believing he was on the right path. When the sobs finally ceased, Olivia pulled away and wiped her face with the back of her hand. "She made me promise one thing. Before she left, what was it? That I would take care of you. That I would teach you to see patterns not just in business, but in life. She told me you were very smart, but had difficulty with emotions, and that I could help you with that." Kyle smiled through his tears. "She was right, and you're already helping me. More than you know." In the following months, Kyle's life changed radically. The Dalton Corp announcement caused exactly the expected scandal. Stock prices plummeted, clients questioned contracts, the media had a field day. But something surprising also happened. People began to praise the transparency. Ethical investors approached. The company, though smaller and more fragile, began to rebuild on solid foundations. Kyle cut his office hours in half. Olivia now lived with him in an apartment they renovated together, each choosing details. She had her own room, decorated with puzzles on the walls and a bookshelf full of books on math, physics, and art. On weekends, they went to the beach house, which was slowly being restored. He learned to make the breakfast she liked, to help her with homework even when advanced math problems challenged him, to simply be present. Olivia, in turn, taught him to see the world with different eyes. She showed him patterns in clouds, explained theories she read, shared drawings of increasingly complex labyrinths that they solved together. One Sunday afternoon, 6 months after Isabella's passing, they were on the beach house porch watching the sunset. Olivia was drawing. Kyle was reading a book she had recommended. The piece was almost tangible. "Dad?" Olivia broke the silence. "Can I ask you something?" "Always." "Do you think Grandma planned all this? The diary, the codes, sending me to you exactly when she did?" Kyle thought about it. "I think she planted seeds. She didn't control everything, but she left clues. She created opportunities for the truth to emerge when we were ready, like a giant puzzle that takes years to put together." "Exactly like that," he smiled. "Your grandmother was wise. She knew that some things cannot be forced, only facilitated." Olivia nodded and returned to her drawing. After a few minutes, she said without looking up from the paper, "I'm glad she left the clues, and that you were smart enough to follow them." "Me too." Kyle felt his chest warm. "Me too." That night, while Olivia slept, Kyle went out to the sand and looked at the stars. He thought of his mother, of Isabella, of all the people who had touched his life and shaped it in ways he only now understood. He thought of the mistakes made, the wrong choices, the lost opportunities. But he also thought of new beginnings, second chances, the possibility of building something true even on ruins. The sea whispered its eternal music, the waves arriving and departing in a rhythm that existed long before he was born and would continue long after he was gone. There was a comfort in that, in continuity, in the certainty that life moved on, always offering new chances to get it right. Kyle returned to the house and checked on Olivia one last time. She slept peacefully, hugging a teddy bear that had been Isabella's. He adjusted the blanket over her and kissed her forehead gently. "Good night, my daughter. Thank you for finding me. Thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to start truly living." End of story. Dear listeners, we hope that the story of Kyle, Isabella, and Olivia has touched your hearts. This journey about family, truth, and second chances reminds us that it's never too late to start over, to choose love over empty success, to decipher the codes that life presents to us. If you were moved by this narrative and want to continue exploring stories that speak to the complexity of human relationships, we have a special playlist prepared with other equally touching stories. You can find it by clicking here to the side. These are narratives that, like this one, invite us to reflect on our own choices and on what truly matters in life. If this story resonated with you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss the next stories we bring weekly. Leave your like if you believe that, just as Kyle discovered, it's never too late to build bridges and reconnect with what truly matters. And in the comments, tell us which moment touched you the most. Was it Olivia's courage in seeking her father? The revelation of the secrets kept in the diary? Or Kyle's transformation as he learned that true success is not in business, but in the relationships we build? Every comment, every like, every subscription helps us continue bringing these stories that celebrate the human capacity for change, forgiveness, and love. Just as Olivia deciphered the codes left by her grandmother, you can decipher your own truths. And we will be here every week with new narratives to inspire that journey until the next story. And remember, as we learned today, the most important patterns in life are not those we find in numbers and spreadsheets, but in the eyes of those we love, in the hands we hold, in the second chances we have the courage to embrace.